Great, let's move on. And our next speaker, I again targeted her primarily because of necessary needs that I saw in my own patient populations. This is navigating the pharmaceutical world. And Terri Shelton is our next speaker that really has expertise in this. And she began her career in Eli Lilly, which is a pharmaceutical manufacturer here in Indiana. She subsequently matriculated to Walgreens, where she was a regional pharmacy supervisor of the East Coast of Florida. And we're actually really lucky that she came here to IU. She now oversees the retail pharmacy at the University Hospital, which is our flagship hospital here at IU School of Medicine. If you'd join me in welcome Ms. Shelton. Thank you. And maybe can I just make a quick announcement as well? We are going to maybe take a picture here at the very end of our show, so if you can stick around, that would be great, just to have kind of the whole event encapsulated in one picture with our logo. So thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Do your brains hurt? Goodness, you guys have been inundated with a lot of clinical, very valuable information, so we're going to turn the tides. There you go. We're going to turn the tides a little bit, and now that's too high. Okay, we'll get it. Talk to you a little bit about navigating the prescription process. The first thing we're going to do is just talk about some definitions. Some of you may have heard some of these as you're navigating the world of prescription processing. But I kind of wanted to talk about a few of the ones that people give you a really funny look when you say them at the pharmacy, and they're not quite sure what they mean. So we're just going to go through a few definitions first. The first definition is off-label, and the reason I chose this is because many of the medications that autoimmune hepatitis patients take are off-label, and that simply just means that there is not an FDA indication for autoimmune hepatitis in that drug monograph. So when you look at a medication's drug monograph, it doesn't specifically say that there is an indication for autoimmune hepatitis. The next drug is third party, the next definition is third party, and you'll hear that a lot, and really all that is your insurance company, another fancy word for your insurance company. Prior authorization, this is a relatively new term over the last few years. Many insurance companies now will require prior authorization before they will cover a specific drug. Prior authorization really is just a fancy word for additional permission. So before your insurance company will agree to cover a medication, they will want more information from your prescriber. They will want lab results. They will want failures of other medications. And then they will have a clinical team on the side of the insurance which will decide final yes or no, we will or will not cover this medication. Brand and generic, I know that everyone is familiar with this terminology. However, I wanted to be sure and point out that in the world of autoimmune hepatology, there are mostly assistance for only branded name medications. And really what a branded name medication is only the one manufacturer can produce and sell that particular product. Brand and generic also come into play when we're talking about co-pays and how much your portion or your co-insurance is. Step therapy. Step therapy is important because many insurance companies are requiring step therapy now before they will cover more expensive, more aggressive medications in some of these disease states. So if you present to your insurance company a prescription for an immunosuppressant in autoimmune hepatology, they may want to know that you've progressed to that level. In other words, they may require that you failed just prednisone or, step 1, step 2, and then step 3. So you may have to work with your, you may have to work with your physician to get to step 3 before your insurance company will actually cover that medication. Formulary is really just a list of drugs that is covered. So there may be only certain immunosuppressants that are on the formulary of your insurance company. And unlike olden times when we kept the same insurance company for years and years and years, many of us are forced to change insurance companies quite frequently. And this is important because the formularies with each insurance company will change. And just as soon as you get comfortable on a certain medication covered by whatever insurance company you have this year, next year's insurance company will have a different formulary, and you'll be required to switch and or get a prior authorization for the medication you've been taking. Preferred and non-preferred is kind of the same as formulary. Preferred medications usually come at a lower copay, and that kind of preferred medications and tier kind of go together in that tier 1 would be a generic copay, $5 for example, when you present it at your pharmacy, such as prednisone maybe. Tier 2 might be the brand name that doesn't have a generic equivalent, but it's preferred, so that one might be $10. And then non-preferred might be either $20 or a portion or percentage of the entire drug. So if a drug is non-preferred on your plan, you are going to be more responsible for a higher copay. Some insurance companies have 3 tiers for prescription medications, some have 4. So we're going to switch gears just a little bit and talk about some of the resources that you can use to help with financial navigation and assistance. Larger institutions and learning and teaching institutions most generally will have a social worker or a case manager that is available. You can access those people either through your clinic or through your physician. If there isn't a social worker or a case manager, there's usually someone in your clinic or your doctor's office who's functioning in a secondary role to help patients with the financial navigation of copays, grants, coupons, things like that. I want to stress how important it is for each of you to have a very good working relationship with your local pharmacist. Although they are not intimately educated on your specific disease state, they oftentimes are the experts when you need a coupon, or when you need copay assistance, or when you're forced to change insurance companies. They can help you to navigate that world to know, if I have a drug right now that is a tier 2 and it's formulary, and I change to this insurance company, what tier is it going to be, and is it still going to be covered? So use the knowledge of your local pharmacist for not only copay assistance, but when you are forced to make changes in your insurance company, and also use them for initial access on, okay, how much am I looking at here? What is my baseline for these medications, and what are my options? Also, I would encourage you to use peer groups and support groups to find access pathways, coupons, grant foundations, and things like that, and share that information among yourselves. Believe it or not, another resource for financial assistance is actually your insurance company proper. Very few people understand that if you are assigned or prescribed a new prescription medication and you find out that it is a tier 4, meaning that you're responsible for 30% of the total cost of that medication possibly, and it requires a PA and so forth. We have had several successful patients who have contacted their third-party representatives and gotten that tier adjusted to the next lower tier, so maybe from a tier 4 to a tier 3. That makes a huge difference in your overall annual expenditure. Sometimes that will require a letter from your prescriber, simply a phone call from a social worker or a nurse, or yourself to your third-party representative, explaining that this is a hardship for you, this is a medication that's necessary, and it has created a hardship on you financially. And they will make these tier exceptions pretty often, so please keep that in mind. Another resource is the internet, and we always use the internet with a little bit of caution, but there are a lot of copay coupons available on the internet. I will tell you that these are generally only attached to branded name medications, And if you do present a coupon with a branded name prescription when a generic is available, you want to be very careful, because that's going to change your copay and tier structure, and oftentimes insurance companies will require you to pay the difference between the brand and the generic copay, and then the coupon doesn't really help you as much as you thought it might. Comparison shopping, more today than ever. Still start with your local pharmacy, start with a baseline, know what you're looking at, but then that doesn't mean that you can't go outside of your local pharmacist and shop at discount warehouses, club memberships, these $4 and $10 lists. I use prednisone as a perfect example. You can walk into just about any pharmacy and prednisone is on a $4 list, or a $10 list at your local pharmacy, but certainly Imuran is not. And you will find fluctuations in these lists all across the board. If you do price shop and you do fill prescriptions outside of your local and central pharmacy, it's very, very important that you always tell your pharmacist the other medications that you're taking, because many of these medications that all of you are on have a significant increase in drug interactions, and they can affect other medications that you're taking, vitamins and supplements and things like that. So make sure that you tell your pharmacist everything you're taking, not just the prescriptions that you're filling at that pharmacy. Okay? There are a couple of mail order discount pharmacies, RX Outreach and Zubex. If you do navigate into this world, there are significant savings. However, I will warn you, there are also opportunities to get charged fees for their assistance in finding you financial support, when most of that is available at no charge to you from all of these other representatives that we've already talked about. So buyer beware on those situations, but know that if you are price shopping, these are things that you should consider. The other thing I'll mention is if you do go that route, please understand that you do not always know the source of your medication, and generics will change manufacturers frequently. So make sure you're doing your homework and being a savvy shopper. The final resource for assistance is a little bit specific here. Cellcept, or mycophenolate, is manufactured by a company called Genentech, and they do have some limited funding available, primarily for uninsured patients at this time. However, if this is a medication you are taking, I would strongly advise you to check with Genentech and make sure that you do not qualify for some assistance underneath this funding. The last topic that I'm going to talk about is less individualized and more as a group or as an organization. I want to make sure that all of you know there just is not any funding out there for autoimmune hepatitis right now. We have searched and searched and searched, and if you contact PAN, the Patient Access Network, HealthWell, you have to provide a diagnosis. So if you provide a diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis, tons and tons of assistance available out there. If you provide a diagnosis of lupus, tons and tons of assistance out there. You provide a diagnosis of autoimmune hepatitis, you don't qualify. So as an organization, you guys have a challenge in front of you to make sure that you get this disease recognized as a major autoimmune disease, and make sure that the funding organizations realize that you all need as much, if not more, financial assistance as the patients who have the other autoimmune diseases. How can you do that? There are two major funding organizations available that are renowned, and that is PAN, and that's Patient Access Network, and then HealthWell. And both of them have websites and email contacts, and I would encourage you all to investigate both of these and reach out to them not only as an organization but also individually. Ask your clinics and your prescribers to reach out to them to begin to recognize the disease state that you're treating. You want to lobby with them basically, because these organizations receive most of their funding from the drug manufacturers. And that funding runs out. There will be a lot of funding in January for rheumatoid arthritis, but by April, it will be gone. And until more funding is added to the PAN grant, then patients will get turned away. So the more you can lobby with the drug manufacturers of the most expensive medications that you're using, and the more that you can lobby with these individual foundations, the more likelihood that your disease will rise to the surface from a recognition standpoint, and these funds will be available to organizations such as yourself. I would also encourage you to reach out to some brother and sister autoimmune organizations, such as the Rheumatoid Arthritis Foundation and the lupus organizations, because they've already done this work. Reach out to them, work with them, find out what they did, what was successful, how you can get on the coattails, if you will, of the funding that's now available for other autoimmune diseases. And then, I mentioned one of the manufacturers, but there are many. So the more these manufacturers are contacted and lobbied to try to find assistance, the more they're going to recognize that they need to add this disease state to PAN and Health Well so that patients such as yourself have access to funding. I don't have anything else today other than if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take a couple very quick ones. They do.
Oh, I have a big mouth. Some of your pharmacies give free medications away as well too. So antibiotics, metformin. So there's, I think locally Meyer here gives all. They have a list of all the antibiotics that they give away for free as well too. So you can look into that as well.
Absolutely, and it is important to shop, but please do keep in mind when you are doing that shopping and you have one medication here and one medication there and another medication elsewhere, you still need that central hub. So you still need your local pharmacist and clinician to tie all of that together to make sure you're not missing drug interactions.
Terry, there's one question, I think it's a good one for you, and see what your thoughts are. How close are brand and generic to being the same formulation?
Really good question. I look at that two ways. If you look at the inactive ingredients in a medication or a generic, and that is colors, dyes, fillers, starches, gelatins, things like that, they're not close at all, because those things that's not what measures. When you're talking about the active ingredient or the drug itself, those are actually monitored very closely by the FDA, and a generic approval will not be granted if they do not fall within a set percentage plus or minus of that brand name drug standard. And the reason I mention that is because we do have many patients who are sensitive to starches and dyes and colors and fillers. And gelatins. And so when your pharmacist says to you, it's exactly the same, I say to you, the active ingredient is very similar and very close, and that should never be the reason why you don't use it. What should be a reason why you may or may not want to switch from either a generic to a brand or a generic to a different generic might be if you're sensitive to some of the inactive ingredients in a medication.
Great. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.